So we're still obviously at that point where the teams are just not super talented and their rosters are likely not very fleshed out. But Carolina is about a tier up in my eyes from Atlanta because, for one, they have their quarterback situation figured out. Bryce Young has what it takes to be special at the next level, and that's something we'll elaborate on shortly. But also, their talent is not ideal, but they have some star players that are going to support the rest of their cast. So there are some actual things to be excited for Carolina. So here we have Bryce Young's stats, and I like that they have his basic counting stats, such as yards and completion percentage, but they also have their more advanced metrics, such as their grades for him as a passer as a whole, but also with him under pressure. And it really all forms together to say Bryce Young was great in college. His basic stats, amazing. His grades are fantastic. And we have this for a 2-year sample size, which really makes me a lot more confident in saying that he'll be good than if it was just 1 year. He's done it too with not the best supporting cast, believe it or not. Even with Alabama always being a powerhouse, this past year their team was not great around him, and he still shined incredibly. So, one thing that really stands out to me is his grade under pressure, which may seem low to you, 67.5, compared to all of these 90s. As the blue dots suggest, he is far above average for a grade like that. The black stripe is where the average quarterback is, and you see he's far to the right of that, suggesting he handles pressure at a very high level. And that's not just stats saying that. If you watch him play, you know that his best trait is likely the fact that he never seems rushed. Even if there is unblocked pressure coming in, he always takes as long as he can while still being quick to process everything. He doesn't get rushed though. And that's a really big difference between him and a lot of other college quarterbacks, such as CJ Stroud, who I think is a great prospect in his own right. Stroud under pressure is a completely different quarterback than he is under a clean pocket. And for Young, he's basically the same dude the entire way through. And that's really good to see because that's one thing that translates really well between the college game and the pros. Is if you can handle pressure well in college, you'll be able to handle it well in the pros. And that means so much because there's continually going to be pressure in the NFL game. So if Young can handle it already, I can't wait to see how he develops in an NFL system where I think Frank Reich is a really good coach. He's going to get the most out of Young because he's gotten the most out of basically all of his quarterbacks in his tenure as a coach. So I think Young will be able to play very well in structure. He's excelled in all of the grading metrics, but he's also going to do really well under pressure as well, and that's where he will really pay dividends, is he can do plays under pressure that very few, even in the NFL, can do. Looking at his supporting cast, the offensive line is actually kind of sneaky good, as they ranked 11th in PFF pass blocking. They're a bit surprising because if you look at them, they don't look that great on paper, but really what they benefit from is the fact that Brady Christensen is their only real weakness, and even then, he's not a terrible player, he's just not a ideal starter, and he's still young though, so there's a chance that he progresses, and even by the end of this year, say, they have 0 weaknesses, which is the real ideal for an offensive line. Yeah, it's great if you can have great starters all the way through, but more than anything else, you just need to have guys that can't be attacked continually, and they're on pace to have that possibly. If Christensen can take a step, And really, if Ekwonu progresses any from his rookie year, which I don't think is too much of an ask, there could be really a premier group because Ekwonu was really a solid tackle year one. And he has the physical upside to just keep getting better with age. So I think this bunch is actually pretty good. They're not great in run blocking, but at the end of the day, if you could pick one, I'd rather have a good pass blocking unit than a good run blocking unit. As we pivot to their weapons, this is arguably a weakness of theirs. I don't totally know how I feel about it. They are the island of misfit toys, as 4 of their 5 starters are going to be free agent signings from this season. And they're all clustered together pretty closely as far as talent goes. You could tell me any of their 3 wide receivers would be their number one, and I would definitely see the argument for it. I think if I had to choose, I would say DJ Chark is going to be their number one just because he has the highest potential out of any of these guys, but they are really close in what they've shown in recent years. To quickly summarize their weapons, you could say that they have 3 wide receiver 3s, or you could also argue they have 3 wide receiver 2s. And I'm not really sure how I feel. I would probably lean a little closer to the 2s, but it's anybody's guess. And as far as their tight end and running back situation is concerned, I think Hurst is about league average for a tight end, and I think Miles Sanders is a little bit above average for a running back, but I wouldn't say tremendously so, because I think a lot of his production was inflated from having ran behind the best offensive line in football. Looking at their defensive backs, they have a unique foundation in place because J.C. Horn was exceptional in his second year, which was his first year of actually playing because he was injured as a rookie. And then, for me, it's all about their safeties because Xavier Woods is a very solid player. Von Bell has been great in his time in Cincinnati. And Jeremy Chin had a bit of a disappointing year this past season, but I think that was more so he wasn't utilized to his fullest potential because he was good in his first year, and I believe he had a second year before his past season. If not, he was good as a rookie. And then Dante Jackson is not a great corner number 2. He's a bit disappointing as a player because he has all the athleticism in the world and just hasn't really put it together at the NFL level. But he's the worst out of their 5 main defensive backs. And you can definitely live with him being your lowest quality starter at a whole positional group. Moving to their front 7, they have some real nice foundation there as well, as Derrick Brown was a top 5 or so defensive tackle this past season, and they still have Brian Burns, who hasn't been able to replicate his year 2 as far as production goes, but he has been a really good player in his own right throughout his career. So they have a ton of talent in place between those 2 guys. It's just going to be a question of if any of their other starters will be able to carry their weight or not. And to round out their roster, they probably have a top 5 linebacking duo in the NFL between Shaq Thompson and Frankie Louvu. They may not be the best in coverage, but they can really thump in the run game, and they're also really good tacklers as well. So there's a lot to like with their front 7 and also with their defensive backs in conjunction with each other. They all seem to play off each other pretty nicely, and I wouldn't say this is going to be a great defense, but I think it could be pretty surprising for some people if just a few players take that sort of next step for whatever their progression may look like. Lastly, for the coaching component, I actually do really have a lot of faith in Frank Reich because I know that he was sort of banished from the Colts in a rather abrupt manner, but the conspiracy theorist in me believes that that may have been in an attempt to ensure that they get a high pick, high enough to draft a quarterback. So there is that possibility because Reich really has excelled with a ragtag bunch of quarterbacks throughout his tenure, and he also really knows analytics, which a lot of coaches still are kind of behind the eight ball when it comes to fourth down decisions, and he's not. So I think that's one really positive he has going for him. Those are my opinions on the Panthers, though. Be sure to let me know what yours are in the comments section below. And also be sure to like and subscribe for more NFL and NBA content.